Coming up on UGTV. A special session of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas.
Call this meeting to order. Would the clerk please read the roll?
A special session has been called for Thursday, July 21st, 2016 at 5 o'clock p.m. in the 5th floor conference room for a budget workshop. Roll call: Bynum.
Here.
Walker.
Here.
Townsend. McKiernan.
Here.
Murguia.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Kane. Markley.
Here.
Walters.
Here.
Philbrook.
Here.
Holland.
That being said, I think if the mayor were here, he would recommend that in light of the events of this week, we all take a moment of silence and either give your thoughts or prayers for the family and the police officers that are every day doing their job. Thank you. Tonight we have the budget workshop. All of you should have a worksheet listing the items to be discussed. I don't have any additions that have been put in front of me in addition to this. All right, Doug, I'll turn this over to you right now.
All right, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Yeah, so tonight, as listed out for the agenda items, we're going to do transit services, service delivery from Area Agency on Aging, and those cuts that have been made through impacts to the state, conversations on animal services, our drug and alcohol fund, Wyandotte, home repair funding, and then revenues by fund, and then we're going to talk a little bit about the upcoming agenda for next week. So with that, I will move to transit services. I don't know who has control of the sheet there. To start with this just lays out what we have on the list for expenditures this year.
Thank you.
As you can see, this is costs that are set from, you can see the increasing costs we've witnessed. The top line indicates what what we spend with the ATA, and then overall what the unified government costs are. This year's budget incorporates a $350,000 increase in the operations of the transit service. That does not really constitute any new rides or any new delivery of service that's being provided through this. It's just mostly through the cost of operations that go on between what we have for the either the ATA contract, which is the bulk of that, and then what we do for our own local. With that, I have Justice Welker here, or Melissa, who can comment on this if you want to. I think there were some specific questions asked about different routes, and unless there's questions on the overall budget, I will turn it over to Justice and have him walk through the areas in question.
Thank you, Mr. Bach. Fellow commissioners, the questions came up during a budget workshop on the 11th of July, and Commissioner McKiernan referenced the exploration of increasing transit services as it relates to getting people to and from employment. And then he followed up on that comment with some additional route-specific questions to me and Melissa via email. So I put together this robust presentation, and this is the condensed version. What I'd like to do is leave you with the robust presentation after the presentation, just basically planting a seed for exploration of additional service next year and the following years. But as you can see, the highlighted routes there, these are the ones I'm going to touch on specifically. And while all of these questions have merit, I think we'll find additional value on the routes that are highlighted there. And I'll reference these on additional slides also. So we'll start with our 103 3rd Street Fairfax. This is a route that serves the Fairfax area, obviously, as the name implies. Provides service to the Fairfax Bluffs Apartments. This is also the route that we extended over to Kansas City, Missouri to connect with the Kansas City streetcar, so it provides service to the River Market at this time. Level of service is Monday through Friday from 5:30 to 7:30, and this route is on 60-minute service frequency. So basically what that means, if an individual misses our bus, they have to wait an additional 60 minutes for a bus to show back up to catch that route. This is, as I mentioned, Monday through Friday, no weekend service at this time. So the question specifically was addressed, would it be beneficial to run the route later into the evening or even into the overnight for anyone who works or could work the third shift? So at this moment, based on the time we end service at 7:30, we're completely missing that third shift. So I put together some cost estimates there, and I think service frequency would be something we need to pursue rather than extension at this time. We get more value based on the frequency of service. So as you can see on the estimates there, we've got a cost estimate to extend the route by 4 hours and then increase the frequency to 30 minutes. So basically it'd be doubling the level of service for that route. Now, other studies and surveys that we've participated in have seen people are asking for that increased frequency. Yes, sir.
I would have been interested in this, each of these also having numbers about ridership.
I can provide that, absolutely.
Maybe you have it somewhere else, but you're asking us to extend on this particular route, and I don't know anything about the route and its users, but we're in a position where we're trying to reduce the mill levy.
Right.
And it's things like this that we increase that trouble me when I don't mind increasing where there is a justification, just to, like for example, fuel. Isn't fuel cheaper for buses this year than it was 2 years ago?
Fuel
I mean,
has
it is for
increased.
everybody else.
Yes.
I mean, what's driving this increase?
The increase in what we saw on the first slide,
The overall increase is $350,000.
Right, and that's the majority of
Do
that.
we have $350,000 worth of additional rides?
I've got an itemized list of where that 350,000 comes from. Majority of it, we've estimated 347 of that 350,000 goes directly to that ATA contract. And it's basically itemized here, increase in service cost due to extension. We extended our Route 107 into Johnson County. We have a decrease in revenue due to, this is again based on last year, low fuel prices, increase in road construction and adverse weather, increase in preventative maintenance due to an increase in local ridership and mileage. We lost some funding, some federal funds had expired, so that wasn't, additionally, that took money off of that contract. Those went back into the contract.
Justin, do we have this document?
This did not make it into the presentation. I can provide this.
Well, you know, if we're gonna, here's how I feel about it. I'm just one. If you're gonna want me to increase this budget, and every time we increase this budget, it impacts how much we can reduce taxes. I want everybody to justify why that budget is increased, or at least the big departments, maybe not every little department, but, I mean, what increased the ATA's cost? What drove that? I mean, did I?
Well, ridership
See,
has
I
declined.
mean,
Let me clarify
I'm
something.
sitting here and I don't have what you're talking about, and I'm not gonna approve 350,000 myself unless I know why I'm increasing $350,000. Just that the ATA wants more isn't an answer.
Let me clarify. He is not bringing anything to ask for additional money
No, I
tonight.
understand. He's the messenger, but
Well, no, I mean, we have built in what's in the budget, and then there was questions about what additional routes or additional ridership could be done and what it would take to do that. And that's what Justice is here tonight, is to explain if we wanted to do some of these additional
So
access points to jobs, those are things you can evaluate, and if you elect to add
I'm
them
sorry.
in, you can. But he's not coming forward tonight to say, this is something we're pushing for at this point.
so if we don't approve this, our costs are stagnant.
In with what I have, well, there are increased costs for operation but it is built into my,
Budget.
proposed budget.
All right.
And if I could clarify, I'm the one who asked for this to come, simply as a way to get it on the table, as a prelude to next year. We have this little bitty increase here, but we have a real need in Kansas City, Kansas, and Wyandotte County to get people to and from work. And the bus is one way that a lot of people get to and from work. I've heard from a lot of people who are riders who have concerns about the route duration, that is how long during the day, the route frequency. I think on the Parallel Avenue route, you said it's a 45-minute wait if you miss a bus.
90.
Before the, I'm sorry, a 90-minute. I'm thinking about cutting that in half to, it would only be 45. So if unemployment, at least mathematically, is the #2 driver of our last place county health ranking, I'd like to see what do we need to do to remove the barriers, if they exist, for people to get to and from work. And as I talk to people, especially here at the east end of Wyandotte County, one of the barriers that's articulated to me is a difficulty in getting to work because of a lack of transportation and a lack of bus services. So the base increase was baked into the budget that we've already looked at, and if I hadn't asked for this, we wouldn't have ever brought that to the surface. And I'm just bringing the rest of this here as food for thought, and if it's better that we leave it until next January's strategic planning meeting, then that's fine with me. I don't want to stir up anything here. I just thought it would be interesting to start thinking about these things more proactively so we could build useful additions into next year's budget before the 11th hour. So,
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner.
Hal,
Yes,
just
Commissioner
for
Walter.
my understanding, we are being asked to approve a $325,000 increase in the 2016 amended budget over the 2015 expenditures. Isn't that correct?
I believe,
Well,
is
go
the
back to
increase
your
in
previous
2016?
It's in both years. Justice, you can go ahead and explain where that sits with the ATA.
So the increase, yeah, the increase in cost is
From 2015 was 2.4. Now we're being asked to amend the 2016 to go to 2.7, right? And then the 2017 is 2.9. So that's a 15% increase in 2016, and then another fairly sizable increase in 2017. But you're saying we're not getting any increase to service? No new routes? No? What, I'm still a little confused about what we're getting for this extra $300,000 to $500,000?
So some of the increases are not just for the contract, some of the increases are for increased capital and also our personnel increases that we are having also. So, but there are increases in the contract. And the contract increases are due to just expenses going up as far as ridership going down and some grants we have lost over the past few years.
Did you say ridership was going down?
Yes. And ridership has been going down because the fuel prices have been going down.
On the ATA system, ridership is going down. Now, on UG Transit, the service we provide, service is either level or increasing. Ridership.
So we have two different systems. We have UG system that we provide, and then there's also what we provide through the KCATA. And that ridership is the one that's going
And
down.
how much of any increase here is the 105 route that was added? Is any of that attributable to the 105?
I'm sure there's some. I don't have an itemized breakdown of what increase goes to
Because
which
we added the
route.
105 Rosedale route
Correct.
a year ago.
A couple
Or,
years ago.
okay.
The
So
service
that should be
increase.
no increase.
Commissioner McGee?
I wasn't gonna say anything, but when you start talking about it, then you make me ask questions. So Commissioner Walters just said we're amending the budget, the 2015 budget to
2016,
I'm sorry, we're amending the 2016 budget. Is that accurate?
Yes.
And by how much?
It's about 300.
And why was our budget 300 and some $1,000 off is why we're amending the 16 budget?
Well, we included additional capital, and then we also have the increases for personnel in there also.
Right,
Then
but,
the contract also did go up.
right,
What-
but why wasn't that factored in last year at our budget?
So our contract that we have with KCATA, when we're doing our budget, we don't know the exact cost of what it may come in at. We completely do an estimate, so we do have to go back and re-up.
And
this
adjust
one.
it.
Yes.
So why such a large increase, like Commissioner Walters said? Why such a large differential?
It's just as far as the increases that were in the contract, and we have lost some grants within the contract for KCATA.
I think that question's probably more for Justice to talk about why the ATA increased their contract cost.
The service cost, looks like it was about $180,000 short, so that was a $180,000 increase. Passenger revenue decreased by $70,000 based on that decreased ridership. We do allow on revenue to offset some of those costs. We're looking at almost a $50,000 increase in preventative maintenance. A loss in funding from some federal grants in the amount of $93,000. So it adds up.
So two questions, following up on that. The services contract that you said increased by $100 and some thousand. What was that again?
The service, yeah, increase in service
What-
costs.
what is that?
That's basically the extension of the 107 route to Johnson County.
And we agreed that that was a good idea as part of the budget last year.
The cost, our match requirement was built in. We did receive federal funding, operational costs, but it's only 80%. We had to come up with a 20% match.
And we didn't know that when we did budget last year.
I think we did. We didn't know what magnitude. I think we expected additional revenue due to ridership, but other variables prevented that ridership that we estimated. So then we lost some funding in that regard.
So, in regard to ridership, is that your best guess, just based on experience, that it's the cost of gas has gone down so more people are driving, or is there actual data that documents why you think ridership is down?
There's data that backs that up. It's depending on fuel prices, road construction, weather plays a huge factor. The month of May, it rained, so that limits ridership.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Philbrook, then Commissioner Bynum.
So even though we don't like being charged for the ridership for folks other than our own community, because it is ATA, we get to bite the bullet and help support their lower ridership. Is that what you're saying?
Of course, they pass the cost or the lack of revenue onto our service contract.
That's so sweet of them. Okay. And so because of some of that, the UG, basically, we handle the Leavenworth route and some of the other routes.
Correct. Yeah, we do the 102 Central, the 103 Fairfax, the 113 Leavenworth Road, 115 Kansas Avenue, and 116 West Parallel.
Right.
Those are the
And
fixed
so at
routes.
this point in time, it behooves us to hang on to our own UG routes because of the trend that the ATA is going
Our cost of service is lower compared to what their cost of service is.
per head. Okay, well, that's important for us all to understand, and that, otherwise we could be paying a whole lot more if it was all ATA.
Yeah. Now, some of
Okay.
these costs, I mean, this is just fixed routes specifically. We also do ADA complimentary paratransit for persons with disabilities.
Right.
We do non-ADA senior transportation. My department's responsible for Meals on Wheels deliveries within the community. So we've got other programs and services above and beyond just these fixed routes that we operate.
Right, and some of that we get grants for, and some we don't.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. While I have the microphone, I just want to let you know that there are a lot of my ridership, even though they're not asking for me more frequency, they are really disappointed in no weekend service because a lot of those people work on the weekends. They're not lucky enough to have, Monday through Friday jobs. And so even if they'd have to wait an hour or more to get a ride, they can plan that into their life as long as they can get that ride to work. And so I just want that out there to be said.
Right. Traditional service on the weekend is on a 60-minute frequency. It's just that peak service throughout the day depends on that 30-minute service frequency to get folks to where they need a little bit
But
faster.
on here it says there's no weekend service.
Unified Government does not operate service on the weekends. Now, our contracted ATA contracts, some of those routes do operate on the weekends.
Are
And
we?
actually, the 101 operates on Sunday. It's the only bus line in the state of
That
Kansas
does.
that operates on Sunday.
Right. And the comment was made about Leavenworth Road.
Correct.
That Sunday they didn't have anything, and
Right.
they made a fact of letting me know that.
Absolutely.
So
I hear that quite frequently.
okay, thank you.
Commissioner Bynum?
Just a couple of quick comments. I sit on the KCATA board as a result of my role here, and we are hearing on the ATA board that ridership is indeed down. And the number's relatively low in the percentiles. It's less than 5% year over year, but just a reminder that public transportation isn't a service that's offered by communities that pays for itself. I mean, it always has to be subsidized, and I am hearing at the ATA level as well that the lower cost of fuel is most definitely the driver of lower ridership.
Correct.
When people have money for gas, because gas is cheap, they drive their car.
Absolutely.
Commissioner McKinnon?
Just one more thing. As we think about this, in my mind, transit services are one of the services that a local government provides, quote unquote, for the public good. So we have public safety, we have public works, and we have services for the public good. And we will do whatever we do in terms of funding transit services, but there are members of our community, even when gas is cheap, who need assistance with getting from place to place in our community. And I do think that although it's unfortunate that the costs of this are going up, costs of many things that we buy are going up. And it is an unfortunate reality of every year's evolution of our budget that costs go up. And we will ultimately decide what we believe we can pay for. But I do think that transit services are something that are provided by local governments for the public good, and they are across the board, across the country, money-losing operations, since the cost of fares is such a small part of the cost of, or the revenue from fares is such a small part of what it takes to actually operate the service. So, that's it.
I don't disagree with what you're saying, Commissioner, but what we gloss over is the fact that public transit loses money. It's the degree to which we lose money. 85% was the last time I was given a quotation on how much our subsidy is for every ride. So the riders are paying 15 cents on the dollar and the taxpayer is paying the 85 cents. Now, there are other transit systems that while they lose money, they don't lose 85%. I guess the question I have is how do you develop ridership to where, you know, it would be significant if we could only subsidize at 70 cents on the dollar. I mean, to me, that's the objective, is to get more people to ride the bus. But we live in a culture in the Midwest where you know, in New York, you take the bus, you take the subway, you take public transportation because it's so inconvenient. Nobody wants to take the bus because it's much easier to have that freedom of driving. I'm just saying, we have to figure out a way to reduce this subsidy, just like any other subsidy. And I don't mean by cutting services, expanding them wisely, strategically, where they will benefit the greatest number. But it does seem to me that 85% is a little bit on the high end of public subsidy for bus service. So maybe I'm wrong about that, but
We performed 1.4 million public transit trips within Wyandotte County last year. So there's a lot of people using public transportation within the community.
well, and we're still, I mean, we're still paying 85 cents on every dollar?
Yeah, it is public service. It's heavily subsidized. As you mentioned, either increase ridership or raise the fare are the two ways to
Have you ever computed what it costs you to drive an automobile from home to work?
me personally.
Yeah,
I have.
do
and
that
it's-
sometime and tell me what that costs you every
Okay.
day to get in the car and drive it to work.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not cheap over the life of a car. Okay.
All right, just, you want to go ahead and walk through the
Sure.
other transit routes that are up there? And these are just for information, so the commission has an understanding of what would it take to expand in different areas.
So back to the 103, we've got scenarios here for extending the route by 4 hours or increasing the frequency on the existing route itself or that extended route. And you can look at the numbers there, they speak for themselves. The 113 Leavenworth Road, this is the route we talked about with the 90-minute service frequency. So if somebody misses a bus, they're waiting 90 additional minutes for the next bus to come. And again, looking at route extension or increasing frequency, basically reducing that wait time in half to 45 minutes. And you can see the cost breakdown for each of those scenarios. 115 Kansas Avenue, now this is a route that's in close proximity to the new Amazon development. So there would be some merit to provide additional service there, and you can see the route enhancement and also the increase in frequency.
Justice, on this one, your extended route that you pointed out, does that take it up to the front door of where Amazon would be, or where does the extended route? Or that's extended by 4 hours?
Yeah,
Can you
that's
do-
we can realign this route without any additional cost
Okay.
at this time.
But right
to-
now, it
to-
doesn't get there, correct,
Correct.
Justice?
Yeah, right now we're at basically 65th and Kansas Avenue.
But
So
one real option on this, without any cost change, would be just changing the route.
Realigning the route
Where
to
it's
provide
going, it'd still
service.
be a 60-minute frequency time, and it would be the 5:30 to 7:25
Correct.
timeframe, which
Yes.
So
I
instead it would
guess
be
this
downstate.
may have been an oversight on my part in working through the budget, that I didn't go back and focus on this, recognizing that by July of next year, they could be hiring in this area. And we want to make sure our citizens have a good opportunity to be, you know, they won't be hiring and going to the site, but they're going to want to know whether or not they can get to work if it's going to start in September. So, I mean, we know we can get there on Kansas Avenue, it's just the timing of this. And until we know all their shift schedules, it's kind of hard to start to pair that up.
Absolutely. And then the 116 parallel is kind of the same as Leavenworth Road in the fact that it offers 90-minute service frequency. So again, the route extension by 4 hours and the increase in frequency, and you can see the cost breakdown there.
So I just have a quick question. How does the frequency affect ridership?
It's been shown to the ridership does increase due to increased frequency. There was a study in Santa Clara, California, where the ridership actually doubled by reducing that wait time.
Yeah, because I'll just tell you, it's anecdotal, and nobody likes anecdotal stories, but occasionally I ride the bus here at City Hall because I can get it right in front of my front door. It's great. I can do stuff instead of having to drive on the way here and on the way home. And I love it, except that it doesn't So I think it's a 90-minute frequency. And I don't really want to miss the bus after our meeting and then have to wait 90 minutes for the next bus. So it's really what prevents me from riding it all the time. I mean, it's just me, but I'm assuming I'm not the only person in Wyandotte County that would ride the bus. And really, if you haven't ridden the bus, those of you who don't ride it, I would encourage you to experience it, because I was very surprised at how neat and clean they are, how friendly the staff are, that, you know, the drivers, and how helpful they are to people. And the people that ride the bus are very nice. I have not had any incident. So anyway, it's just my feedback.
Thank you.
The 101's good too.
Good.
Well, you understand that in my part of the community, the part that I'm nominated from anyway, south of state, there's virtually no bus service. There is in Argentine and Rosedale, limited. There's no bus service in Turner where I live. And no plans that I've ever heard in the 30 plus years I've been around here to have a bus out there.
Yeah, we provide service to the Turner Recreation Commission building, the public library there, but beyond that, it's the only place in Turner that we provide service.
So it's kind of hard for people who live in Turner to take advantage of it. I'm just saying, you know, you increase frequency, you're going to increase your cost. So the subsidy is still going to be the same.
And I wasn't advocating Commissioner Walker, I just, so you understand, I was just stating.
No, I
That
agree.
might be
I agree. I
part
wish
of
we
it.
could have a bus every 20 minutes at critical locations. But, you know, for not getting really very much, you know, we're getting 350, you know, there goes 350,000 of the 12 million.
And then there's that 1.4 million ridership. That those people are actually going places and working and spending money.
You don't know that.
I don't know that there's
You don't know that
1.4.
you don't know that they're spending money.
Well, I'll tell you what, most of them, when they get off, they go straight to Kmart, they go to Price Chopper, they go to every time I've ridden the bus, they get off and they head straight to the stuff they need to buy. I haven't seen that many of them not head straight to something, to buy something.
And I think
so.
that's a great point. It's the ancillary benefits of transit. It's the people who are working in the community, the income tax, people who are shopping, we provide sales tax. It's not just the fare itself. It's the ancillary revenue coming in due to the fact that they've participated in transit to get to where they need to go.
When we get these increases from the KCATA, who, I guess it would be finance, who audits to determine how they're doing it, and that, you know, they're not shuffling off more cost onto us than we should?
I work in conjunction with the budget staff, and also our legal department also reviews any contractor documentation from the ATA.
I've been on the commission now a little over 3 years, and I think it would be good. We have how many people on the KCATA board?
We have 3.
Then the mayor appoint 3 people.
We have 3 appointments to the KCA.
Have we had those 3 appointments appear before us? And
I'm
this,
here every time you are.
well, I know. But before you came
To
on,
your point,
I don't know. I haven't seen the other 2 myself that
What
I
I
can
think-
recall. Have we?
Commissioner, I think what might be,
Justice is
to
one
your
of them.
point, and I appreciate where you're coming from, KCATA has recently created standing committees that are a lot like our standing committees, and one of them is finance. And Reggie does go over and attend those. So I think it's another layer, and I also think that it's something that I could take responsibility for in terms of being an ATA board member, bringing back those kinds of increases and making sure our county administrator and Justice and Reggie and people know and understand what those costs are and why maybe they're going up. So I think it's a valid point. It's a good question.
And I will add to that too, that I believe with your standing committee, Justice has appeared, I mean, he comes before your committee, and when you talk about different efficiencies, he has come before a couple proposals, I think probably each year. He's had one where he's come back where we've either expanded changed some of the routes, particularly those that we're running. Obviously, those are the ones within his control where we maybe have had some duplication where it was running over the same street, and we could move down a block or a couple blocks away and get into different areas to increase ridership on certain times. I think one of the more dynamic changes he had was we now run one of our buses that crosses over into Missouri. And that was one that really helped people that were working workforce, but it linked up into the Fairfax area and hooked up into some of the other ATA buses in the downtown Kansas City, Missouri area. So he's really, I will say, come forward with some pretty dynamic changes that have, for as much as you can, I think, with a rubber wheel bus that's running through certain areas, but I mean, made some changes to that to make those increases that he talked about for our own transit service. So it's good. I also note the question came about on personnel to me, and I stated the personnel he referenced for costs were those were related to employment contracts. We did add a half a position to his budget, and that was one where he came forth, and that's essentially a person that cleans buses. Currently, we spend the money on overtime for the bus drivers. There's no increase in the budget for this. In fact, I'm hopeful it'll decrease it. We just moved overtime over into paying for the part-time person that's cleaning the buses rather than have the bus drivers doing it. So that was just an efficiency change that Justice brought forward in this year's budget. Unless there's any other questions, I think that concludes our presentation on transit.
Any commissioners have anything further for transit?
Thank you, Justin.
Yeah, thank you. I will leave you with the robust presentation just for your own benefit. Thank you.
All right, our next section is on Area Agency on Aging, so I'll ask Gordon and Ruth to come forward on this. Question about this one was what was going on in relation to service reduction costs being brought to us by the state of Kansas, as we didn't have probably as many cuts from the state of Kansas to our budgets this year. I think you all have all this, actually. This should be all included within the packet you received today, so I don't think there's anything additional in this other than a cover sheet. We did have some service cuts here, so I'm going to turn this over to Gordon and Ruth to step through what we were facing and what we have offered up within this year's budget as solutions.
Thank you, Doug. Effective July 1, you'll see there that the Area Agency on Aging will take a 40% cut in their Senior Care Act funding. That represents $247,000 that they use to support seniors who are still able to live in their homes. Let's see. So the $247,000 cuts represents the inability of the department to provide these core services that you see here. Additionally, the case managers that is supported by these funds go out and make assessments. And so one of the impacts that's included in the $247,000 reduction is $54,000 that the case managers won't have available to them to provide supplies when they go out into the homes and make their assessments. These assessments are designed to keep seniors, to the extent possible, living in their homes as long as possible, thus avoiding nursing home care, which is 3 or 4 times the cost of in-home services. So this slide represents service hours in this area. If you focus on the 2016 actual, or the kind of orange line is the homemaker hours that the agency was able to provide, and the green line is attendant care hours. And then if you move over to the very last column, what has been proposed in 2017 is some funds that would almost get the agency back to what they were funding, to their funding level in 2016. We will still have some seniors not able to get some services, but the money that's proposed in the 2017 budget will almost get the agency back to what they were providing in 2016 actual. Ruth is here if you have any specific questions about the impacts.
Commissioner Bynum, I believe you asked for this item, so I just wanted to kind of set up what we did this year. So we tried to replace the service hours, though you can see there are some supplies that the residents received that were not filling within this budget.
What was the increase for 2017 that we were adding? I remember seeing it per the 12 million at like a $90,000. Was that the total?
$80,000.
80,000. So 80,000 is the total increase
Yes.
to the budget for 2017, and hopefully it'll get us close to the service delivery level that we had anticipated or that we had in 16.
Correct.
And the reason I brought it up is because just to, be on record with what the cuts like that do to services that are being provided by your agency for some of the most vulnerable people in the community. And I'm glad we can supplement that. I'm sorry we have to. But I don't know if you have anything else you specifically want to add, but that's why I had asked for it on the agenda, because I wanted to highlight we are stepping in and we are filling the gap for services that are being provided due to cuts that are being made elsewhere to your programming.
Commissioner Philbrook, Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you. We need to put you on the corner so you can see all of us.
Well, I didn't feel I could
Am I in the way?
sit in that chair.
That's right. Sit a little further forward. No, just kidding. So we've been cut 247,000. We're putting back in 80. What's happening in that other gap that we lost? What's going on in that?
Well, it will create a waiting list.
So that's what that does. That extends our waiting list for people to be able, and that's basically what it is. And so what kind of percentage of a waiting list? I mean, we're really, how many people are going to have to wait that wouldn't have had to wait? Any ideas?
That would be kind of hard to project out. Right now, we're looking at about 169, 170 people that we would be able to address. Some of those services were decreases that we had to make. So we included them in the wait list numbers, and some of those are people that are outright waiting on services.
Okay.
So for instance, if we had someone who was receiving 25, 30 hours a month, and we had to decrease those to 10, we could use that extra budget to raise that
To get somebody else in.
Yeah, to get those services back up to that 30. But
Okay.
if we're not able to do that, then we still added that number to the waiting list, because those are people who have been assessed. They have a level of care score that equals nursing home placement. So if they're
Okay.
not receiving that services,
They're part of the waiting.
yes.
Okay, if they're not getting full service, they're part of the waiting
services
list.
that they need, that we assess them to require, they would be included in that wait list number.
And that's that percentage that they're not receiving, even though they may be getting some services
Right.
from it. It's the balance of those services that we're adding into the waiting list.
Right.
Okay, I'm glad you're bouncing the numbers, not me. Thank you.
Well, I didn't have a question or a comment, but just I'm trying to formulate my thought just even as I'm listening to that. There's an intrinsic cost associated with not having the service or being put in a waiting list that you could equate to what would that cost if they were in an actual nursing home. I mean, because what we're saying is cutting costs, if they don't have these services, the the alternative might be a nursing home facility.
Right.
But that cost is significantly much more.
Exactly. And with the Senior Care Act customer, you're looking at customers who primarily don't qualify for Medicaid because their income is slightly higher. These citizens also pay a certain percentage into this program based on a sliding scale. So an average plan of care may be $300 a month per person. That would be the cost to keep them out of the nursing home. And as you can see, compared to the monthly cost of a nursing home, that is, as you stated, significantly lower.
So a nursing home stay now is usually somewhere between $5,000 and $6,000 a month?
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, anything else on this? Well, the question is, can we do more? She asked.
I guess the question is, if we did more, what would it get for the department?
I guess.
Well, you can never project how many people are going to be coming in and needing services. So right now, we're saying we're able to address those who are on the waiting list, those who would have a decline or decrease in services. But you always want to look at what you're going to be able to provide on down the road. And so you'll have people that come into the service realm that we'll be putting on waiting list.
Do you have any idea of percentages? I mean, I know you don't know total numbers, but
I'm going to defer that to Rick Van Dyke, who's our Senior Care Act.
I know we're
Home
getting
and
down in the
community.
weeds
Could you
with you,
come
but
in?
we're trying to
Maybe give an
understand.
average of what the number of referrals we get in monthly, and
I mean, of course, none of us want anybody to have to be on a waiting list, but on the other hand, we have to look and see how much money we're putting out for how many people and what we can live with is what I guess I will say.
Right, the needs of the community are always changing, and as we progress, our seniors are, with the baby boomers, that's getting more and more and more, so it's just gonna increase over the next, months, years.
Right.
So any help that you guys could give us, we desperately need it. We have two funding sources from the state, the nutrition program and the Senior Care Act program. They've cut the one, and we hope there's no more cuts. We're not anticipating any more, but these services are so crucial, and a point that for this group, when you take a senior out of the community, they're no longer, and move them to a facility, they're no longer going to pay taxes, they're no longer going to have a home ownership, they're no longer going to shop at our Walmart, they're going to be in a facility. So we don't just lose the senior, we lose a member of our community that makes up this community, and that's our goal, is to keep these people from ending up there, letting them have a continuum of care in their home as long as possible. So any help you guys can do, it would address the wait list, the percentages. A lot of the money that we're looking at, we can do the in-home services, but when we look at other services like dentures, there is no oral care for seniors. Even on Medicare, there's nothing. So we have people that have no teeth. We're providing dentures with this money. They have nutrition issues, health issues, the health disparities, just by getting somebody dentures. It's incredible. So with that $54,000 that we used last year to help people get dentures, we can continue, and adult diapers, we talk about skin breakdown. If we're not able to do that, these people are at extreme risk, and police, ambulance, they're going to be called out to these people because they're not going to be cared for. So it's a huge, huge issue, and any help that you guys can do, we desperately appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm going to sound inconsistent tonight because I'm on the buses, because I don't like the idea that we can't get ridership up, and we got 85% subsidy, and nobody's subsidizing me to drive my automobile. On the other hand, this, for some reason, and I'm not making any statements about anybody, these kind of services have a certain priority in the way I view the world. Maybe I don't want to, people that need to ride the bus, I understand, but they're able to get on a bus and ride a bus, and we're talking about is in-life elderly people usually, that just being able to stay in their home, use their own bathroom, cook their own meal, have the kids come over or take them someplace. So I don't have a number, Doug, but whatever, I'm just gonna tell you, whatever you can come up with to supplement this budget to make the seniors in these dire situations more able to stay in their home. I'm willing to look at other issues that I might probably get somebody mad at me for, but this, nobody can look at these elderly people and not want them to stay in their home or provide them basic services. It isn't asking too much to just be able to end your life living in your own home. And if you know somebody in that situation, and I do, that is the overriding, everyday consuming thought that she's not going to be put in a nursing home. So I'm one vote. I want more money for this agency to do this work, this kind of work. Commissioner Bynum?
If we restored, I'm sorry, were you first?
Who was? I'm not very good at this. I don't have the mayor's cachet at having his eyes all over the place. So, were you first, Commissioner Townsend? Go ahead.
Well,
Mr.
I'm
Townsend,
glad-
I'm gonna start writing them down. Townsend, then Bynum. Anybody else? While I'm writing? Okay, go ahead.
No problem. Well, I'm glad you went on and said that. So this one sounds so crazy, but I would believe it. I would support taking from or adding to the budget the entire amount that was cut. I've had opportunity to personally observe what staying in a home can do for an individual's in terms of adding to their longevity and the quality of their life. And even though as I look around the room and see how spry my fellow commissioners look right now, and kicking it and vibrant, all the room full. If the Lord lets us live so long, we will all age. I mean, we're older today than when we were yesterday.
Not a bit.
We're not? Okay. Well, you don't look it. That's true. You don't look it. We hide it well. But I have seen firsthand what the availability of these services can do. Let me ask from a historical perspective, we may not be able to as accurately forecast how many persons are added to a wait list to come. How many were added last year? Do we know?
We ended the year with, I believe, 156, something like that.
And that's even before the cut
Right.
of the services?
Right. Now, at the end of last year, we were able to look at some of those, and we had some extra funding that we didn't use in the in-home, but we went ahead and accessed those dollars to help out. But we still ended the year in a wait list. So, but
Do you have any idea what it would take not to have anyone on a wait list? I'm just asking, assuming that each year you had 150 come. That's okay. That's
yeah,
okay.
that's
Okay. But at least we know what we had last year. And so that was the main thing I wanted to say, that I would support an addition of up to at least 247,000. That was the amount that was cut. And I think these just are the most basic, most essential aspects of quality of life and care. That's it.
I might ask, could you go to this slide? I'm sorry, Commissioner, this slide that shows our hours of service that we have up there, and because I think that was key, and Ruth, maybe you need to explain a little bit to this or clarify to me, because I know when we went through this in the budget process, we talked about the overall cuts in dollars, but the reinstatement of the service provider was going to be able to get our service hours back close. We're a little less than where we are to what you're having today.
Right.
And to me, the key on that point was our ability to keep people in their homes, because we were going to continue to provide just about the same number of service hours as we were before the cuts. Now, I guess I didn't drill down on why the dollar difference. I know there's the $50,000 that's not in the budget that could be an impact by some of the supplies that we will no longer have to provide to these seniors when we go to service them. But is there another explanation? Because by this chart, we're providing about the same service hours for in-home care that we were in 17 that we are doing in 2016. Am I missing something there, or is?
Just that we're not, and I thought Rick would kind of address that as far as the number of new referrals that we're getting in on a monthly basis, and that amount varies. Around the holidays, you'll get an upsurge of numbers because children are coming home to see parents and they notice the condition, so we'll get a lot of calls. So it's kind of hard to project out that number, but of course we'll be able to address the ones from 216 and the ones that we already have on a waiting list, but there's not a lot of forecast on what we'll be able to address as people come on. We still will, even with this, we still will be adding people to a waiting list because we're going to use those dollars to address the waiting list and also address those clients who got a decrease in their services. Does that help?
Okay, then for point of clarity, I understand from the other presentations we had that money has been added to the budget, about 80,000
Right.
for services. But we're talking services that only mean visits, visitations. Does it not include the other supplies? So what I had in mind was whatever it would take to arm those persons who go out for the visits to also be able to provide the dentures, diapers, walkers, whatever those supplies were that are also necessary to quality of life and to what the people need in the home, not just the visit itself. What would that number be?
Commissioner Bynum?
I'm looking at page 249 in the budget book that lays out aging. And I think I'm seeing Senior Care Act is where the majority of the cuts are occurring. And so it looks like about $60,000 from column 2016 original to 2016 amended, but then another 45,000 to 2017. So 100,000, I guess, from now through all of 17 is what I think I can see. I feel like the answer is somewhere between what I was going to ask for, which was at least restore the 54,000, and what you're suggesting. I don't know what the answer is. I'm with Commissioner Walker. I certainly want to see, again, these most vulnerable people get what they need from this department to the best of your ability to deliver it. I guess I would rely on Doug to bring us something somewhere between those two numbers that we could possibly live with once we hear the rest of the items that are on our agenda tonight, because I have another agenda item that kind of speaks to this same population that I'm asking for us to spend dollars on. Would like to see how it's all gonna shake out. But that's what I think I'm seeing, and I'm leaning forward because I don't want my fellow commissioners to be able to request to speak.
We have Commissioner McKiernan and then Commissioner Philbrook.
Certainly, I support the intent of this, and I think we should do all we can to provide services for the public good. And I know that this organization might be a little biased, but I'm going to read from the American Public Transportation Association's document, Public Transportation Benefits for the 21st Century, in which they say, according to a national survey of individuals aged 65 or older conducted by Harris Interactive in November, more than 4 in 5 seniors believe public transportation is a better alternative to driving alone, especially at night, and 83% agree that public transit provides easy access to the things that older adults need in everyday life.
Yep.
So I would just say that while I support this, I certainly would also support maintaining at least our current level of public transportation services, because it too provides transportation for the seniors that we're talking about right now.
Commissioner Philbrook?
So looking at the 465 amended from the 531 original, what does that shift tell us? Is that just lack of money that we could spend in that area, and so we changed it? Is that what the deal is?
Yeah,
'Cause it went down.
The state reduced the funding that they
And
allocate.
so that's that percentage that
Yeah,
you
these are
took out.
state-funded programs. I mean, and that's,
I
you
just
know, it's
wanted
a
to make
discussion this group has had before. It's like,
Yeah.
what's in our level of care versus what's been other programs, and unfortunately, in those other programs, we continue to see reductions.
Yeah, I was just trying to make sure I understood the reduction. I didn't think that we figured on overpaying. You know, I just wanted to look and see what that was. And so what I'm hearing is everybody wants to go back to at least the 531, to at least the previous and maybe more. Is that what I'm hearing? From 2016? I'm trying to get a feel for what everybody else thinks, because I don't know.
I think that, we've got a lot of requests.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Johnson.
And,
That I will say amen to.
can I get an amen? In light of the discussion that we had on Monday, Doug, I don't know, how many rabbits you can pull out of your hat, but, there's a lot of requests, and given the fact that we are looking at reducing the mill levy, it's going to be impossible for everyone to get what they need. I think that's just about as clear as, and I've been waiting for somebody other than myself to say that, but
I
since
said it
nobody
last
did.
time, it's your turn.
My turn. So I think we need to do the best that we can, because we have a few more requests that are coming down the pike here. And I don't know, I might have one before it's all said and done. I think I already have, but everybody's not, I think we want to do the best we can. I think I'll leave it at that.
I think that's all I'm saying to Doug. I'd love to restore him giving me more money, but, you know, it's something that I'm not comfortable with. You know, I don't know the saying, but you can judge a society by how well it takes care of its elderly. And, you know, right now I don't feel like we, not us in particular, but our culture doesn't take care of the elderly in a proper manner. And this little bit of money isn't going to make that change. Commissioner Murguia.
So this is just some friendly advice. Does your department get grant money for services that you offer currently? Do you get funding from REACH, the REACH Foundation?
I don't think reach.
Okay. Well, they just changed their formula for funding, and I believe they would fund your supplies. And if you need some help sifting through that, I'd be more than personally willing to help you with that. And I think it'll give you up to $50,000. I just looked at that today. So they changed their approach. So there's one potential outlet. The other thing is, if you're talking about supplies, I know there's another number of other organizations that may not offer all of these supplies in one location, but you might be able to get some from one organization and some from another. So if I can be of help that way, I would be more than happy to help you with that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Bynum.
Yes, it's a requirement, but I think they also fund government. So I don't think you should have an issue. And if you do, there's always community-based 501c3s that can work as a pass-through organization for you.
So one of the questions I had asked with regard to this topic was, what are all the pots of money that drain into Area Agency on Aging? And then I found it in my budget book. And so pretty much everything you do is grant funded. I mean, you are a recipient of grants from the state, from the federal government. I do know for a fact that in the past you have applied for money through the Healthcare Foundation and been awarded it. So I appreciate Commissioner Murguia's remarks to you. I know that you know, based on how you operate, that you're a grant funded operation primarily, and not so much locally funded. We're
Right,
just
and-
a recipient of all kinds of grant monies that
Yes,
come
yes.
together and provide services to older adults.
Yes,
So-
and the really cool thing about Senior Care Act, the seniors contribute to that program, and it goes right back to services. It doesn't go into anybody's pocket. It goes back for more services for that community. So
And we
the
thank
more,
you.
the more we help that program, it helps others.
Thanks for what you do.
All right, if there's nothing further on this topic, then we'll move on. I believe the next one's animal services. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll ask the Major and Mr. Holloway if you guys want to come forward and join Mr. Criswell at the table. Our next item up, Gordon, you want to go ahead and click the slide ahead? I'll start just by noting that in this year's budget, and really from the last 2 years, we have made some significant changes, though I know we had been down somewhat in animal control. The slides up here just show where we are from a position FTE count. Last year we added, or for 2016, we added 2 new positions in animal services, and then we added 1 more in the 2017 budget, at least what's proposed in my budget. And you'll notice the yellow to the orange denotes the fact that we used to have a police captain out in that area, and now we've gone to a full-time civilian manager trained in animal services to be out there and stay with that operation. And that just kind of denotes what's in this year's budget, and then there's some capital items. Gordon, I'll turn that over to you and let you talk about some of that.
As you see, we've made some recommendations in 2017 for some capital items that include basically some equipment in the shelter. And I think the most important thing, one of the most important things on this slide is we know we need to do something with our animal shelter facility. We need to upgrade it. The Kansas Department of Health and Environment has changed some of their regulations related to how we care for animals that we take into our custody, if you will. Our facility is really not in the best position to be able to do that right now. And so one of the things we are proposing is to a study to start in 2017 with assessing just what are the needs of our animal facility and the growing concern for animal care in this community. So the capital dollars represent just some kind of basic things to go in the facility, cages and replacing some cages and mobile adoption type things. But the real big piece to this is doing the study of our shelter facility and determining what we need to do going into the future to meet the growing needs of our animals and the changing regulations around animal care. Major, did I miss anything? Or?
So that's what we've included in this year's budget. I know Commissioners Bynum and Philbrook asked for this item to be on, so I don't know if you wanted to have some specific topics to get into or questions, and that's where we have our experts here to answer those, and we can work from there.
No, I just want to support the fact that, yes, we do need to really know where we need to put the money. Yes, we need to put some money into this because it's a safety issue, it's a health issue, it's a lot of things because kids won't get out and play in certain areas. People don't want to walk in certain areas because you got packs of dogs running and just all kinds of issues like that. And so if we want a healthy community, we're going to have to make it easier for people to be out there and feel safe to walk in the street, on their lovely new sidewalk, sorry. But, excuse me, without having someone come in and take a look at exactly what we can do in the most efficient manner, I don't think it's going to come about. Because we've been kind of toughing it out and kind of going along for quite a few years without making any improvements or really looking at this. This has been a stepchild for a lot of years, and now it's finally catching up with us. And now that our public is telling us, very aptly, that we need to address it, I'm glad to see you guys here. I'm glad to see you saying that we need to do this study. I'm sorry that we don't have more money to put toward, but when you come back with the information on how we can improve things, whether it's a new facility, a change in the facility, however that works, then we can address those monies at that point in time, additional monies beyond these. So I appreciate you coming forward.
Anyone else want to speak on that? Commissioner
So do we have a long-term plan to spend more money every year on animal service, or is it our long-term goal to try to be able to spend less money on animal service by solving some problems that were just mentioned so we don't have to deal with them anymore? Or what is our long-term strategy?
Well, the chief made a presentation not very long ago. Part of our strategy is to improve the site, improve the facility. We've been waiting on the improvement on several things that we do have budgeted, such as the HVAC. That would go a long way to help the health of the animals. We know that we have a very, very small facility for a community our size, and so we're reaching out to other entities to adopt out animals better and quicker, and that's part of the director's position. Why he was put in that position is to reach those. For example, you know, the formula for a population our size for 155,000 would show that could collect around 10,000 or 11,000 animals a year. We're currently collecting about a third of that because we don't have the facility to hold it. So theoretically, we need a facility 3 times that size if we go by the national average. We're not even asking for that. We're asking for cages, newer cages that can stack in a way that can be cleaned and it'd be more efficient. We've made those proposals. That's part of our plan. We want a mobile adoption. That's part of our plan, because if we can do the adoptions throughout the community and present the animals throughout the community, we feel like we can move them quicker than maybe some of the other facilities do. However, we're not going to wait on that. We're networking with PetSmart and other places around our community and transporting those animals out as quickly as we can to make more room to pick up more animals, to make our streets safer. But it's a logistical situation.
Commissioner McGee?
So, Doug, we've talked about this a little bit. I'm not quite sure I understood the answer. Have we ever done a facilities or a building study here at the Unified Government of all the properties that we own?
Previously, we've done some space studies of our facilities, and looked at different areas where we could come into. Now, I don't believe animal control was probably part of that. Animal control is a different animal. But I think one of my answers that I came back to you with was, I don't see a need to do a space study on many of our other buildings unless they have intention to do something with the space, because you can spend a lot of money doing space studies until you're ready to start investing and doing things to capitalize on it. And that's why the focus here was, it seemed like this is partly to Commissioner Walters' question, I think, the fact that we keep needing to do something with our shelter down there, but we're never really quite addressing it. And taking the time to spend some money to go back and do an analysis of that and say, is expansion right? Or is this just not going to work on this site, and do we need to do something in a different area to add to it, and be a little more thoughtful in that process? So that's the answer to that question. And I think really when we come to do facility studies, they are kind of based on what's our long-term projected need for that area or that department of operation, and then pair it with that facility.
Yeah, so I don't want to overshadow the animal services presentation today, but I do want to throw something out there, and we can talk about it later, so we don't need to talk about it now. But this is, for me, this whole facilities issue is way, way bigger than just animal services at the unified government. And I don't want to get into this tonight, I'm just going to throw it out for people to think about. So things that I have thought about over time, for example, we've talked about this juvenile justice facility that we're going to build new. And there's been some thought, a lot of thought and effort put into that. I really appreciate that. But there are things like we have a traffic court on the second floor here in this building, while our courtrooms are across the street in one building. And then we have some other courtrooms over in a different building on the other side. There doesn't really seem to be, and then to add, when you're looking at things from a public safety perspective, you really should have all those sort of public safety things in a public safety complex, and not spread out all over the place. So when the difference between your space study is that when I look at a space study, you know, I would think of how are we going to use the space within City Hall, this building. But as you know, our government owns a number of buildings and a number of pieces of property. And I think I am suspect that some of these space issues may be resolved if a quality facility studies was done to assess what some of these buildings that we may not be using to their maximum capacity, or we could do something differently, yes, without spending huge amounts of money. I mean, do we still have, is there still the old jail on the top floor of, it's still up there? And is it empty?
Yeah.
Yes, well, it's
Okay.
full of storage.
It's not really empty.
Okay, so anyway, like I said, we're not gonna talk about that tonight, but it's a bigger issue. I would just say that this is one department, and we should stay focused on animal services for tonight, but I would just ask my commissioners that as time goes on to sort of think about that, you know, we're quick to say, let's build this juvenile justice facility, and it is very good planning and very well laid out, but does it really solve our entire public safety, the way we approach public safety and safety issues like that? So I just thought of it and wanted to get it out there.
It's a good thought, and I guess I can look back 20 years almost since we probably did something that comprehensive, and you all just know it as our fleet center today, but I'm sure the major will recall we had a hodgepodge of fleet maintenance facilities all over the city.
Sir.
And it was a major undertaking. I believe it was a $7.5 million project, but I think it paid for itself probably 7 or 8 years ago, and it's just more money in the bank because of having such a consolidated operation today, because of the way we did a more global plan and eliminated a lot of small facilities, and then brought all our mechanics together, you know, with the exception of fire, and made a very efficient operation there.
Commissioner Bynum?
Thank you. Just kind of to wrap it up, maybe, I think that Mr. Bach's budget is calling for one more animal services officer, if that's correct. So we added one last year, and we're adding one in 17. Oh, two.
Right?
I'm sorry, we added 2 this year, but we only added 1 new position.
One
We
new.
replaced one.
One
and
new, okay.
1 new pin.
So we're slowly, I think, kind of incrementally getting
Moving
back
in the right
up to
direction.
the staffing levels that I think we agree we need. And I like the items that are being put forward in terms of, especially the study. I do think it's important, and I appreciate your point. You know, you never know what we might own somewhere else, that if we looked at everything comprehensively, we may realize, oh, we don't belong at 30th and Park at all, you know, so I appreciate all of that. All of that just to say, I appreciate the work. I appreciate the effort at getting staffing up, and I just think it's one more piece of evidence to show that our budget is allowing us to do a few more things, and this is so important to the life, health, and safety of the community. slowly but surely, but I also do appreciate the leadership that you're showing and the seriousness that you're taking with regard to dealing with this piece of what unfortunately the police department gets to handle. But thank you, both of you.
You're welcome.
Just one more thing, if you don't, just a short thing. We look at this budget, but I have to tell you, and thank you, Commissioner, for saying all what you said, but I do want to point to the fact that the police chief managed to find money in the police budget to implement quite a few things for animal control, animal services, such as their new communications software and things like that are going to allow them to help keep track of these animals, no matter where these little critters move to, and where, it makes it just easier. And to be able to go online and do the stuff over the internet to register your dogs and cats and that sort of thing. And that means less traffic into our location, which saves us on having to have more people, to take care of that. So I just don't want us to lose sight that we have made a whole lot of inroads, and those things are going to start showing up as within a couple of years. We'll really be able to notice that. So thank you.
Thank you.
I know you're all gonna laugh, and I'll grin and bear it, but these dog packs we're talking about, they are a perfect target, and I don't mean munitions, for the drone. And locating them and identifying where to find them at any given time. Everybody, I know thinks it's real cute when I bring up drones and what their potential is, but they are absolutely going to be a big part of the police department in the next 20 years. They are, in pursuit of people. You can break off pursuits, you can follow. They're going to be, and certainly in animal services, these dog packs I hear about, I don't see them out where I live. Occasionally you see somebody let their dog run loose, but I don't see the dog packs. So where they are, we need to be able to locate them and hone in our service people at that location when they're there. And you can tell Chief Ziegler and you guys can have a laugh over it, but
We have a drone, and we're really happy about it, and
are you using it for animal services yet?
well, all of that takes money, but we've got the drone, and we are currently using it to locate lost elderly people.
Well, I just encourage the use of drones. I really do.
I agree.
I really think they have a future in the department, and can be a safety factor for the police officer before he arrives at the scene.
Aren't we limited by who can use a drone? Like, don't you have to
Yes.
have a license to fly an airplane to
Kind
operate
of,
a
yes,
drone?
but
No.
I own a
No,
drone.
no,
I
no,
own
but
one.
legally.
I know who's in
I have a
violation
drone.
then if you have to have a
Well,
pilot's
no, what I'm
license.
saying
Yeah.
is though for most companies, a lot of companies like surveyors, they make sure, their insurance companies make sure that whoever operates that drone has a license, because they do not want to.
depends on how
Yes.
high you go and how big it is.
That's right, yeah. So
Yes.
just throwing that out there too,
Yeah.
might as well. So we're a little limited sometimes, I think. Don't
All
you
right.
want to make sure?
Hey, Hallie, just have one thing.
Okay.
I was at-
Commissioner?
I was at Project Eagle this week when your guys had to swoop in and save the children from a possum, so good work.
Our drone was for tactical
At the children's campus, there was a
support,
possum on the playground.
like you're speaking about, and we got it for our tactical unit, but because it has FLIR, we can also use it to find, emotionally disturbed people, or we can find the elderly who are lost and things like that, children, and so it's going to have a lot of uses. We're real excited about it.
Don't fly it over this building on commission meeting night then. Get it honed right in on this table. No, I preach this, and I'll probably be dead, but nevertheless, one day they'll be a big part of every police department. Okay, now we move to drug and alcohol.
All right, well,
Commissioner?
Speaking of drums.
we have a little presentation. Just want to set out, you can hit the next slide here. It's the Special Alcohol Fund. Just to show what we have $1.7 million in this fund, which has
Thank you,
been an
guys.
ever-increasing fund. Just a little side note on that, most of the money comes into this fund from obviously the alcohol tax that you get on beverages and such. So with the expansion of the Village West area, that's been one where we have collected that money continually over the years. It was not one that was ever pledged, so that's how this is funded. And it's divided up three ways: the general fund, parks and recreation, and then our special drug and alcohol programs. So the general funds, that's kind of just dispersed out into the various things we do there. Parks and Rec is just dispersed out into everything that's in the Consolidated Parks Fund. The Drug and Alcohol Fund, I think, is where you wanted a little more focus, and we'll just tell you where the money goes today, and then you can offer your comments, Commissioner.
Okay.
All right, so from the slide, you see this is a distribution of the funds. Community Corrections gets a direct allocation for treatment and prevention of folks coming through their department who have drug and alcohol related offenses, where the court has mandated that the individual, the offender, get involved in some type of drug and alcohol rehabilitation. So Phil's shop gets a allocation off the top before we do the third split.
Is that a percentage, a certain amount?
Say that again?
What he gets off the top, is that a certain amount?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you determine?
We've got a slide for it coming up, I
Okay.
think. So the community grants piece to this is the RFP that community groups submit for an allocation of funds for drug and alcohol treatment. These funds are reviewed by the Special Alcohol Advisory Board, and then they make recommendations to the full commission that you all appoint. You all appoint 10 members to review these grants, ask questions, and do analysis of these grants, and then they Public Safety Business Office comes and makes a recommendation based on the advisory committee's funding request, and then you all approve or disapprove the funding request for these outside agencies. So in 2016, Community Corrections, their allocation before we did the grant awards to the outside agencies was a little over $381,000. And you all approved in 16 these three agencies for a total of the $249. They all got different amounts, but that was the $249 was the total amount that was available for allocation. One of the things about these agencies that I didn't put in the slide is generally they serve individuals between the ages of 10 years old and 25. And I believe most of these agencies require some type of sliding fee scale for getting referred to these agencies for drug and alcohol treatment. Oops. So the question that we were asked to look into was if we did not grant monies to the community-based agencies, we could.
I think this is what it was.
Is this what they were looking for?
Yeah, I just want to explain what the
Oh,
program
okay.
was. Then Commissioner Margee, I believe, had set it on.
Yeah, so thank you very much for the presentation. How this came up is I have an appointment, just like all of you, to this Drug and Alcohol Advisory Committee. And candidly, I really wasn't sure what they did. I know I've been here a long time, but thought it was about time I investigated. So I contacted some staff and found out what exactly are these appointments doing, and so that I could find the best appointment for this committee. And what I realized is I ended up getting a copy of the statute that governs this funding and how it's distributed. And we do, as a local government, according to the statute, have the right to keep that money internally. And then just by coincidence, Administrator Bach, part of our budget is allocating 2 new, I believe, community correction positions. And those are being funded out of our general operations budget, you know, the part of our budget that everybody wants a piece of for some sort of special program. We won't go over transportation or aging again, but we're always looking for money, more money for out of the general operations budget. So with that said, I started thinking, if we have our own drug and alcohol needs internally, then why aren't we just using this money internally instead of giving the money to other services? Not that all those agencies aren't great and don't provide a great service, but if, you know, as Commissioner Johnson said, there's only so much money. We've got to figure out a way to take care of ourselves, meaning the government and the community as a whole, before we can start offering assistance to outside organizations. So it's simply up for discussion. I think it might be a good idea to keep it internally, but it's nothing I feel particularly passionate about. I just thought I'd bring it to everyone's attention that this is money that we could keep internally and utilize to pay for drug and alcohol services that we provide.
I might clarify, and I'll ask finance or budget, anyone to clarify, but I believe we added 1 position in the community corrections area, and I believe we funded that out of the special alcohol and drug fund. Is that correct? That is correct. So part of the $381,000 is going to pay for that new position. It's not coming from general fund.
Okay, but was the other information accurate that the $250,000 could be used to pay for other drug and alcohol related services that the unified government directly provides?
That is correct.
Okay, and we could keep that within our own budget, and you then could allocate it as part of our bigger budget. We don't necessarily have to go through a committee and allocate these funds directly to the community.
Right. I mean, I think maybe Gordon would go there. I mean, it could go directly towards some of the operations. I mean, Mr. Loughlin's program is largely funded through outside agency or state-funded programs. However, we have $600,000 or $700,000 in general fund operation or funding things that go into his budget, and I believe some of those would be eligible for this type of program. It has to be drug and alcohol related. We don't have anything currently that we do as far as treatment, and Phil, correct me if I'm wrong there. Ours would be, there are probably some eligible expenses, but we don't do the treatment. Now, there might be some other alternatives there.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of different areas that the unified government has that could be applicable to that. It's a pretty wide category under the drug and alcohol, because it can actually be treatment services, it can be education, it could be a lot of different things. The health department might have some aspects as far as the education part of it. Within my operation, I'm trying to think of general fund. Well, an example would be under pretrial house arrest, we do drug testing. And some of those costs could possibly be offset. The drug kits themselves that we use to do the testing. That's one area. There's one thing that I don't know on, I was trying to remember on it, the RSI services. Part of their services are, I believe, detoxification. Not all of it. I think probably RSI, the majority of the services they provide are more related to the mental health issues. But part of theirs are for alcohol stabilization, or people coming in on detoxing off drugs and that. But I think under the statute, the main thing, well, in my last reading of the statute, that once the oversight board is established, to do something other than what they want to do, I think you have to have a vote of your county commission. And at that point, then the commission can move that money anywhere. I think that was the only caveat, but it's pretty
it's pretty wide. I mean, there's a lot of, there's some, yeah. But there's also, could be areas where you could expand into existing areas to perhaps help mitigate costs. An example is like with the new juvenile detention center, where we're going to be hopefully co-locating courts and staff and things like that. There could be additional services provided. One of the biggest shortcomings I think we have, as well as most criminal justice systems, is the lag time between arrest to sentencing, especially on adult DUI. Sometimes that can be a year. You could get services started way earlier and get some more bang for your buck and improve the outcomes of that person on supervision. The same goes for youth coming into a facility, or that a family in crisis that comes into their through the intake and assessment. You could provide some vouchers to go out to other providers.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of options. But.
So, thank you very much. So one of the things that I also specifically thought of was we've had a lot of discussions about the cost of housing people in jail and how they could be better served potentially in other kinds of facilities, and freeing up some of that jail space for the right kind of offender. So if there are these inpatient services that we can send some of our offenders to that are clearly there because they have drug or alcohol problems, if we could send them to quality facilities where they could receive in-house residential treatment. I happen to know, as in very many years ago probation officer, that many times part of your conditions of probation or sentencing is to attend 30 days of inpatient treatment. I've read that a million times in my life. And if they can imagine if they could get that done before sentencing. I mean, I just think there's some great opportunities, and you all have said we have too many appointments that we need to make, and it's too hard to find people to volunteer to do those. And so I thought I was just going along with what everybody else wanted to do.
I'm sorry, Ann, I never said that.
Well, a lot of people said that.
Any other comments?
Just,
Commissioner?
it's an interesting concept. So, is this a board or a commission that we created?
Yes.
The appointment to the alcohol is not part of the statute?
Correct. Right.
Okay. So I'm okay with looking at that, and I think it's part of this group of folks we have looking at our boards and commissions.
Yes, give us direction.
That's Markley and Walter.
And Jane and Emmerich.
I guess I would be interested in exploring it further if I had a little bit more information on what the other options would be. But I think my recollection of the fund, when we say special drug and alcohol programs, is that those were treatment and prevention. So in my understanding of the law, drug testing, maybe not so much, but I would need more information about what that means.
Yeah, the statute's pretty wide in that,
Okay.
in that view, and I can't off the top of my head
So
do verbatim, but it was a very wide swath that it cut. It basically has to do the services you're providing, or the staff or whatever, basically has to be working with people with drug and alcohol issues. And so that it's a pretty wide cut of cloth. The one thing I will say, inpatient treatment is very hard to find nowadays.
Well, I was
due to
gonna say that.
due to a lot of reasons at the state and the Medicaid cuts, and even our own health insurance provider, it's pretty tough to get in. And a lot of them are really shifting towards the outpatient, cheaper, and things like that. That was.
Mr. Bach?
I might offer, I think maybe to get the answer to that is maybe we bring this back to the standing committee and, have Mr. Lockman come in and sit down and kind of talk through. This is currently the direction we give our board And do we want to overall change that direction? So I think it gets before your committee works it actually, you know, because the structure is, are we more interested in saying we'd rather pay for something else other than the treatment programs that are currently provided for these, or do we get the bang for the buck? So why don't we put that down, if that seems to be the direction, and it can be one we can bring back this fall or whenever.
Well, I would-
And I would
and
like
work.
to see some numbers on
Yeah.
services provided by these three, and
Right.
where are these services gonna be provided if we take that money?
Exactly.
Reallocate it. Commissioner Philbrook?
Thank you. Yeah, I know that our committee had been working on all of these committees, and this is one of them that we've cussed and discussed, and one that we wanted to bring back to the full commission for us to have an active conversation around and bring in a lot of information to make sure that we are expending the monies to the best of our ability to see what the other options are. So thank you, everybody that's brought this up.
So I do have a question. I do need to make an appointment to this. If I didn't expect us to take action this evening, but my understanding, is it correct that this committee only meets 4 times a year?
I think they meet twice a year.
Oh, good. Okay, so when is so then I may not need to appoint someone, is why I'm asking, and Commissioner Markley was saying she is ready for an appointment also. So when's the next meeting?
It's probably coming up. I have the RFP on my desk that I held for this meeting to see if something would change, but the RFP is to go out to select, you know, to get proposals back, probably from these 3 groups and whoever else may be proposed. So
Do we have to put that out for RFP in August, or can we hold it till we decide what we're gonna do with this?
Phil, I'd take, or Gordon, your comments on that. I mean, I'm sure the biggest thing would be the delay in any of these service providers having the funding that they may be thinking they're gonna get in January.
I don't know if there's any legal reason why you couldn't hold them.
So if
Just
the
an
commissioners don't mind, I hate to appoint someone and then them not do anything and then unappoint them if we change our minds. So as long as the money, we're not out of compliance with statute, do you care if the RFP process gets delayed until the standing committee can come up with a recommendation?
No, I just recommend that those entities that we funded in the past understand what's going on, so they don't figure us into their
budget.
In their budget. That's all. Just,
And that's the comment that I was going to add. I was going to just reiterate what I heard Commissioner Walker say. The impact that it's going to have on those organizations could be pretty significant. And then it makes me ask, you know, are they doing something that is directly tied to the benefit of the county? That it would, by taking that money away from them, we might end up spending more trying to do it in a different way instead of outsourcing. So I don't know that, but there's a lot of questions that need to be answered.
and you mean, like, as an example, give them money coming from another direction from us? Yeah, I understand, yeah.
All right, moving on to Wyandotte.
All right, and I'll just, as we close that, Phil, I'm gonna ask you to get that teed up for the next administration standing committee. So if you'll work to get that on there, because I think we need to be on it.
I was just gonna say, you might wanna coordinate with Emmerich just to
Yeah.
share the information our committee's gathered on that
Okay.
particular committee.
I think that the emphasis that you're looking for is to try to mitigate costs already expended by the unified government or potential
I think it's
future
full
costs.
analysis of the groups that we spend the money on now,
Okay.
and then a comparison to what we could spend that on within some of the other operations that the unified government does today. So if you and, I believe Angie probably would be
Okay.
good to help you on that.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, the next one is a question about WYDEC, Wyandotte Economic Development Council. We increased their funding by $50,000 going into this year. This is largely for the purpose of retention and workforce operations that they're doing. I largely believe that we get a lot of bang for our buck in our investment. They leverage private sector money for about half the funding they do there, and they get the others from our jurisdiction, Bonner Springs, Edwardsville, and the Board of Public Utilities. Any specific questions, or can talk about that?
Moving on.
they are one of the best investments we make, in my opinion.
I'm so excited about our workforce group that I could just fly high because they are doing so much and it is making a big difference in the community. And we're even getting folks from Kansas City, Missouri, Jackson County coming in to work with us too on workforce, that sort of thing. So this is exciting for our region.
They know that their service territory includes Turner, don't they?
I believe Amazon
I'm telling
project
you,
is
they're-
right
they're-
there.
They're doing nothing in Turner. And they did not bring Amazon to the table. Okay, I made mine.
Don't really do much south of the river.
I was gonna say, I wasn't gonna speak for your district, but I don't think they do anything south of the
They
river.
don't really do anything south of the river.
So,
I like
perhaps,
them.
perhaps a word from the county administrator that they're, we'd like some economic
No,
development.
might have economic development.
Are we talking workforce or economic development? Thank you.
Moving on to home repair.
All right, the home repair I just put up here, and I know the concept was not to talk about CDBG. I think I just pointed out this because I think it was non-CDBG. I just pointed out this is what we do have money for in this regard is low income target areas only, about 300,000, and I believe Commissioner Bynum wanted to talk about that for areas that this money cannot go to service.
Thank you. I did want to talk about money, not CDBG money.
Thank you.
And I asked to add this to the agenda because last year when the mayor did his listening tour, I think, Commissioner Walters, I apologize, I think you are the only district that I missed on the listening tour.
Yeah,
So
we missed you too.
I know, and I heard that in the community. So 7 out of 8 districts I attended, and as I was listening, people were talking a lot about aging services, and a lot of what they were talking about within that category were help for their homes. CDBG, and we've talked about this more than one time, has restrictions on it. We know that it can be used for 4 things, and those things are all major, thousands of dollar repairs per household, and many people do not qualify for the use of those dollars. I'll stop right there and say I did talk to Wilba Miller today in CD, and I'm happy to report that she said that with the CDBG funding, we are halfway through the year and they are halfway through their money. So that made me feel better because I'd been hearing prior to that we were having trouble spending that money, and it doesn't seem to be the case. You probably all know that in my work, I work with older adults, and we do operate a minor home repair program. So the need in the community is great. The resources available for minor home repair are few. And I always kind of hold CD sort of out here to the side, again, because I think the dollars are restrictive, and many people don't qualify for what they will pay for. So I just wanted to give you some examples of just in the last month or so in my nonprofit work that I do for a living, the calls that I've taken and some of the jobs that we've done on almost no budget. Grab bars in the restroom, painting, not entire electrical systems, but just switches that don't work or pull chains that don't work. Light bulbs, motion lights need to be changed, and you don't really want to climb a ladder when you're 85 years old. Pilot lights being lit, windows that are broken, porch railings that aren't secure, cleaning gutters, porch step repairs, leaky faucets, leaky toilets, garage door repairs, door locks replaced, furnace filters replaced, flooring repairs, and we have done hot water heaters. So what I'm asking is, what I'm asking this group to consider is, I had suggested $200,000 be used to create a minor home repair fund that helps older adults and folks on disability, preferably that lower income older adult. I'm requesting that we allocate the money. I just throw 200,000 on the table. I don't know what a good or correct amount is, but I had a sense that with 200,000, we could really do something. And Commissioner Murguia, on Monday, you made a comment that really struck home with me when you were talking about just taking a small amount of money and really doing something with it and really showing the community that a service can be provided for a fairly small investment. And I agreed with that with regard to Argentine Rec, and I think it holds true in this situation as well. So I'm asking that we allocate the money, that we don't dive down in the weeds on creating the policy. Here's what's in my head about creating the policy, that we hand it to Livable Neighborhoods. They already convene a minor home repair coalition about once a quarter. They bring people in Wyandotte County that are doing any kind of home repair to the table on a quarterly basis now. I can tell you that's not very many people. Christmas in October, our community development staff comes, Habitat comes, Shepherd Center, and NBRs, some of the NBRs come, and the ways that I've gotten things done is by trying to partner up with all of those agencies so that together we get a larger project done. And then otherwise I use volunteers. So I don't want to belabor it. I'm asking you to support that we find 200,000 in the budget, that we let Livable Neighborhoods bring together staff and community volunteers, because those are the people who know the communities that they live in and what the needs are. And also maybe one or two people from that Minor Home Repair Coalition that they already convene, and those folks work on a policy, that we don't create that policy, but we let that group work on a policy and come back to us in December or January, bring us what a policy might look like, and that we give this a try. But I think we can do a lot of good for that same age group we were so passionately talking about earlier tonight. So that's my request. Thank you.
Supreme Leader, may I speak?
Commissioner.
Okay, I'm putting you on the corner next time, I don't care. So I like the idea. I think, isn't codes automatically involved with this a lot of times because some of the issues that come up, people are sent out on, codes are sent out on them too?
Are you asking me?
Yeah,
So
I'm trying to get a feel back on this because I thought that they were
code
involved.
enforcement staff, I know at the Minor Home Repair Coalition level that's convened, code enforcement staff does come to those meetings, but not everything is addressing a code violation, but sometimes it is. So I do know that when codes are in the field,
Sometimes they bring back
they're often
things.
dealing with a vulnerable population, and they're saying, here, try these phone numbers for help, and I'm getting those calls. I can assure you of that.
Yeah, I was talking to one of our codes people not too long ago, and like what you said, it wasn't a codes violation, but when they're out there in the community, because they're out there a whole lot more than I am, and they see little this, little that going on, and they can tell that there's going to start to be a problem, a deterioration problem if some of these things aren't addressed. Something as simple as cleaning out your gutters, I mean, that can cause major problems for your home if you don't do that. And so for them to be involved and take an active part in this, I would ask that that happen.
Well, Commissioner, I think the code staffers, to Commissioner
Right, no, but I'm
Bynum's
just
point,
asking that they remain involved and do come forward.
they do really, sometimes they do case management to avoid what you're talking about because they see the potential code violation, and they know that if someone is disabled or on a fixed income, it's not going to do a lot of good to haul them into court and try to make them comply with a fine that they can't pay. So they look for this group to help to avoid bringing them into court.
That was my understanding. Thank you.
Commissioner Markley?
So some of you probably remember from last year, I have angst with these kind of programs because I think they're difficult to manage. And I think what we discussed last year is that at least with the CDBG program, as we were looking in detail at some of the houses we'd spent money on in the past, what we found is that we really just kicked the can down the road because the house a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later would have all these codes violations and it would be in the tax sale and it was still having the same problem. So I just said if we're going to put more money into this type of program, I want to see those houses tracked long term. Because if we come back here after 2 years and our tracking shows all we did is kick the can down the road on a bunch of these houses, we know that's not a good use of our money. So it's not really my favorite program. If the rest of the commission wants to see it move forward, I'm fine with that. I would just ask that we make sure that we're using the data that we can gather from these type of programs to make sure that we're making good decisions about what the policy should look like and whether or not this is getting us the value that we think it should be.
Commissioner McGee?
Commissioner Bynum, I just have a question for you. The $300,000 that's up there on the slide right now is, that's how much is allocated from CDBG money. Are you suggesting that an additional $200,000 be added to do minor home repair? And are you suggesting that that come from CDBG money?
No.
Or you're saying separate?
I'm saying general fund dollars in our budget, 200,000 aside and separate from that program entirely.
And do you have any idea how the $200,000, who would be eligible for that? Would it be income based?
I believe there should be an income basis.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm asking is that we allow a separate committee from us that's made up of some staff and some community volunteers and some folks who do minor home repairs in the community, that those three groups come together to set those policies and that they bring those back to us so that we can vet them further, approve them, or ask them to change them. But that we not set that policy, we ask a separate group to set that policy. But I would certainly think an income basis of some sort.
Okay, so I don't have necessarily any objection. Just a reminder, we're going in the other direction for people that said they wanted to lower the mill levy. So I'm just saying.
But we're saving $350,000 next year because we're funding your project this year.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, that's fine. I'm just saying, I'm with Commissioner Markley, and I might be saying it another, a different way than this. But my experience with minor home repair money over the last 9 years as commissioner, at least through the Unified Government Program, has not been positive. Commissioner Bynum, I have worked with your program at the Shepherd Center, and I do think that program is a great program, and there is a difference. I think what it comes down to is these kinds of programs can be good. It depends on how they're administered, is part of the problem. So I do want to say out loud again that my problem with the home repair funding that is administered by the government, I think that they oftentimes make grant investments in housing that is in such poor condition that the little bit of repair that they do is not going to have any meaningful difference in the quality of life that that resident is having. And nor do I think the investment that they've made are long-term sustainable solutions in helping a person stay in their home. So that's just been my concern with CDBG and home allocations. I've had a very different experience, as you know, with the Shepherd Center. And I can't put my finger on why I like one so much and not the other, except I still stand by what I said. I'm not interested in my district accessing these CDBG funds in the future. I would give them to any district that wants them, and you can carve my district out of those funds, and if you get any calls, you're more than welcome to blame me, because I think what this fund does is perpetuate poverty and perpetuate terrible living conditions in our community. And then it also affects, when you're band-aiding a home together, it not only affects that person, but it affects their neighbors who have to live next door to this home that's being band-aided together. So there's just so many issues that come from it. So with all that said, I'd absolutely consider something of what you're discussing, but I would need to see the details of how people qualify, because sometimes I have a better feeling about funding someone that may just for a period of time be experiencing financial difficulty. So sometimes income isn't always the best way to judge who's best eligible for home repairs. Do you see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
An elderly person that was working and then is not now, just temporarily, may need new locks on their doors, or a new window, or in the case I worked with you on, a new hot water heater, but may not ever need assistance again.
Right.
That kind of funding, I think, is very beneficial to the community as a whole and the individual.
Commissioner McKiernan.
Conceptually, I'm right where the two of you are in terms of this. I certainly see the need on a daily basis. People who are in desperate need of some assistance to make repairs in their homes, to mitigate code violations, or to improve their standard of living. But having said that, and so I'm saying conceptually, I am in support of this, provided that we get a structure around it that we all feel is workable. And it's almost like we need a case management structure, because there are factors that led to, in many cases, the need for this money to be spent after the fact. Can we possibly address any of those factors now or in the future to make sure that, as Commissioner Markley said, we don't end up back at this house in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 24 months. But now when I start talking case management, I'm adding an administrative layer in here that takes away the money that could otherwise be spent on the repairs. But I do think that we need to, so case management on the one hand. On the other hand, getting to these people who need assistance earlier in the process. I've had a couple of instances, one I discussed with you the other day, where it's just like, it feels like we've come so late to the process where no amount of money that we could spend would catch this house back up to where it's gone. And so how can we find these places to intervene earlier? How can we orchestrate an intervention earlier and then follow the outcomes on the long term? So conceptually, I'm all for it because I see the need for it, but I appreciate all of the factors that could make this both a blessing and a big curse.
Anyone else on this? Commissioner Townsend?
I agree with Commissioners McKiernan, Markley, and Murguia, and obviously Bynum for the need. I'm glad that Commissioner Bynum articulated the types of things because the emphasis is on minor home repair. And so I'm just hoping that when this policy is developed, we won't kill it from the start with too much administration, but make it clear, as Commissioner McKiernan says, we want to come early enough to make a difference. And these sound very simplistic in the types of things that were done, which leads me to the next comment. Do you have any idea of what the cost of those types of things were for a year? Was it 200,000? Was it really 100,000? You know, with regard to the amount.
I had 200 in my mind because I think there's some administrative cost involved. If we agree to fund this and we hand it to Livable Neighborhoods and the community to come together and make the policy, somebody has to run it. And I know I run my own, so I know there's a lot of case management and administration that goes into it. I have done my own time study of my own time at Shepherd Center, and I know that 30% of my time, being the executive director of that organization, is spent on minor home repair. So there is administration involved, which is part of why I was saying a couple $100,000. The flip side of what I just told you is that because the repairs are minor and I work with volunteers, you're not going to believe me, but for the last 4 straight years, with a budget of less than $4,000 for supplies, we've done more than 100 every single year. So.
Or we need to just
So-
give you the money to do it.
So no, you can't give me the money. We know that. You can't give me the money, but what you can do is the need is so much greater than my little one staff person office and handful of volunteers can do. And that's why I'm asking us to make a commitment to this, because the need is so much greater than any of the groups I mentioned can do. I try to, within my own program, I try to not have rules, because I'm not looking to disqualify someone. I'm looking to qualify everyone. So, and I'm asking everybody I know in Wyandotte County or anywhere else in this metro area to help me. So that's how we're doing that many repairs on that little money. So what that had me thinking was, oh, if we had some money, think of what we could do. So.
Commissioner Philbrook?
Well, I would recommend that Commissioner Bynum definitely be part of the structure that's put together. And I don't mean that you stay in it, but you make recommendations and work with them to put together the policy, because you know what's worked for you. And you, even though you don't have it written, if you had to write it down, I bet you could come up with some of it,
I mean, I have ideas in my head of
how you do it.
what I would ask them to consider. Thank you.
And so I would, if I'm going to put $200,000 out there, not personally, but as a community, I want the person who has the fire in the belly to make it work part of it to get it set up. Just a strong suggestion.
All right, well, Doug, I'm taking all of this you're gonna put a sheet together, and you're gonna show us all these, wish lists, and how it balances with the 3 mills, and we're all gonna have to look at, reality in the face of what we have brought upon ourselves. I mean, yeah. Ideally, I support this. I'm sure there's a great need, and if it's properly handled, and all those things that Councilwoman McGee has said. Commissioner, sorry, I'm still stuck half in the old council days. But I don't think come Monday or next Thursday we're gonna have all these things and leave them in the budget. It's not gonna work. It's just not gonna work. And the only way it's gonna work is, we're gonna have to back off on the mill levy cut. And it's gonna take 6 of you to decide that, or 6 of us. I mean, cause we can't spend all the money we've been talking about and make 3 mil cut and make it balance.
Just one more
And
comment.
I'm not an accountant, so I'll wait to see the numbers, but just doing it in my head, we've already busted the budget, so.
And I just want to make one more comment, Commissioner, and then I'll drop it if I think I have semi-consensus to ask you to try to work something in. But again, the community survey and the mayor's listening tour both brought forward aging services, and I believe it landed in the top 5 on both sides. And so to me, it's just another item that speaks to it. So thank you.
I guess I'm gonna ask for clarification on, so there's an expectation that I find $200,000 to build into one of my budget scenarios for this program? I mean, is that,
Does
am I
that,
just getting
do we get the-
direction, or are you doing a straw poll, or, I mean, and I can tell you, there's a big difference between what I can build in my proposed budget versus what I can build in one that has a 3 mil reduction. And likely what you would see in the 3 mil reduction is not gonna be the same as what you see in the others, just practically speaking, so
Why?
I'll just
no,
offer that.
So sorry, Doug, but why, tell me again, you might have already said this, why are you not, why is the 300,000, you think we need more than 300,000, or you didn't like the income restriction? You said it's so restricted.
I didn't put the 300,000 on the slide. I think the 300,000 represents our CDBG.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Not home.
And, sorry.
I think what the comments from the commissioner to me, and I only put that up there just to show, here's money we spend toward that today, but hers was, as you pointed out, when we're spending money under the HUD regulations, it's a whole different dynamic of paperwork that we go through. And I believe the commissioner's point was, if we can do it unrestricted from any HUD regulations, we can touch a whole lot more people for a whole lot less money. But it is a matter of how do we develop a policy to make that happen.
That's it, exactly.
Is,
Thank you.
okay, I just think, I'll say it out loud, Doug, I just think how we interpret those HUD regulations is what makes our life miserable. You know, I think that there's other cities spend that amount of money on the things Commissioner Bynum was referring to, and it's federal money, so we're all under the same rules. So I guess I don't you know, that's been my complaint along. That's when Commissioner Townsend and Commissioner McKiernan and Markley and I were all on that committee. They kept coming up with all these restrictions, and I know Commissioner Markley for a fact, at one time brought a very specific example where they were saying we couldn't do things with that money that we could do. And, you know, I would say I would have no issue with that money and raising that CDBG money for home improvements if it did the things that the Shepherd Center does, which I think are very valuable. I've been around a long time, and I'm just, like I said, I've been part of this CDBG committee for a long time, and I'm intimately familiar with it. I've been to the training in 2 different states. So part of it, I think, is how we interpret it.
Commissioner Bynum?
I wouldn't argue it because I am not an expert, but I did look into other cities, and the cities of KCMO, Johnson County has a program, Manhattan, Kansas has a program, Omaha, Nebraska, Lee Summit, Tulsa, have programs, and they are HUD dollars, and they are very similar to the electrical, heating, plumbing, there's one more, that are allowed within that CD. So it leads me to believe that there may be some wiggle room within CD, but I don't think it's very much wiggle, based on what I'm seeing the other cities do with their HUD money.
Just saying.
But I'm willing to ask the question. What I'm asking this group to do is straw poll or whatever's necessary to have Mr. Bach look at some dollar amount outside of CD that's for this program that we know is so very needed in the community. And I'm willing to entirely be negotiable on what that dollar amount would be.
Or what if you found out a broader way to interpret the CD rules?
Or that.
Okay.
We know that isn't gonna happen with the way things are in our department as it is now. Not gonna happen.
Well,
So-
our administrator's in charge of that
Well,
department.
then, I think
It could
we've
be
all made our point clear that we think there's a different way of doing business down there.
I mean, I don't know
But what
how
I'm
many
trying to
ways
get
say it.
to is, I don't have, you want a straw poll, I'm not locking myself into agreeing to any of these things, nor do I expect any of you to have locked yourself in on anything, other than, let's take a look at it and see if we can make it work.
Yeah.
If we can't make it work, then that's where we're gonna have to start saying, no, it's, as I recall, one of the things we did with CDBG was we cut the home repair last year. Did we not have
We restored it.
We restored it, but it was less than what it had been. So
Yeah, I mean, we cut it down more, and then we did bring it back some, but it wasn't.
But Hal, the reason, this is the part that everybody seemed to miss last year. You know, I don't know how many times I gotta say this, or how many conversations we have to have. No one was against minor home repair. And in the way that Commissioner Bynum has laid it out, we've been in favor of that. What the majority of the commissioners on that committee were upset about, Hal, is how the minor home repair money was being spent. It was being spent on homes that were being band-aided together. Yeah, they put a hot water heater in the home, but the home was falling apart. The hot water heater was gonna last longer than the home was. So we just thought it was ridiculous, and we couldn't get that department to even enter into any sort of in-depth discussion or even evaluate other programs elsewhere. There is no way by federal law anybody up here is going to tell me that Johnson County, who receives the exact same money, can run a different program than Wyandotte County can. For some whatever reason, for the 9 years I've been a commissioner here, that department does whatever they want. There's very little pushback, and there's very little change. And we've gotten this money for years, and frankly, I feel like it's made very little difference in our community.
Well, I've been around 30 years, and I don't think it's made any difference in 30 years either. So, having said that, let's move on. Revenue by fund, expenditure by fund.
This is in pages 46 and 47 of your book. I believe Commissioner McKernan asked for this to be on there. If you would like, we can have Kathleen step through this, or Commissioner, if you had something specific you wanted to talk.
You know, since the time that I've asked for this, I've actually looked at this a little bit closer, and I've actually talked a little bit with Kathleen, and I've resolved my questions, and so I don't know that there's any need to bring this before the commission tonight.
what were your questions?
No, we don't. No, you gotta think of the questions on your own.
I just wanted to learn vicariously through such a smart money guy.
Brian will hold a seminar after the meeting.
Okay.
July 25th agenda. Do you want to comment on that, Doug?
Well, yeah, I have two more slides here, and I'll step through those. So the final public hearing will be this coming Monday. That'll be opportunity. It's really one that's done more statutorily than I would say is practical, because we go through a lot of, I would say, opportunities for the public to come in and weigh in to us as to what they would like to see changed in our budget, particularly the one we've done in February that gives you input well in advance, but we will conduct that public hearing Monday. Immediately following that, we'll come to this floor, and that's where your standing committee will come into action and go through that. It looks like we have a fairly short meeting. That should be done in about 30 minutes probably. Maybe I shouldn't say that, and I should knock on wood or whatever, but yeah. And then we'll proceed to the budget workshop right after that, which will be held in this room. There'll be two topics really that are primary on that agenda. One is the yellow sheet we've used in previous years, and the other is errors and omissions. And Gordon, you want to flip to that next slide? So I just want to talk about a couple of things coming up, and I'm going to step back because I feel like there's a need, because I've had a few commissioners ask me about this, and on the Public Building Commission, and in part of the budget, I'd gone through and listed the Public Building Commission and listed a few different items under that. I put the fire station repairs in there, or the new fire stations, and I had put the quiet zone section. And I think the confusion that came about that is they were both listed in the same area. We had discussions about this. Some points made to my statements. I actually was not here at the budget workshop when we had that discussion. However, I did provide a letter that came along, and I think that was probably my error in the way I drafted that to talk about it, that it kind of made it look like they were tied. They're not tied in any way. They were just put under that from a fund perspective, because I said, okay, if we generated some dollars that we would see could go toward the fire station facilities, then we could take that, let's say it's an operational savings that comes within the fire department, then we could issue a bond out by the Public Building Commission and then take the money from that account and goes directly to it to pay for it. So it's all accounted for within the existing budget as we put forth. And then unrelated to the fire stations in any way, but just under the same category, is where I had the quiet zone section, noting that, okay, it's here, we did the study, it has the $5.6 million price tag to it, and if we want to do that, we need to identify what funding stream we would need to tie to it. So I just wanted to clarify, because that questions came back to me from a couple of commissioners, and I wanted to make sure I was on the record saying there's no tie to them at all. I was just using that as a basis to show this is how I could make these happen in the budget, but we would need to tie the fund source to them down the road. Any questions on that or additional clarification required? You know, ultimately we may move the fire stations over into debt or something like that. Okay. Yellow sheet format, what I'm generally thinking of for this is that I'm going to come back with a format that probably shows my proposed budget laid out. Then we'll have a 2 mil reduction and probably a 3 mil reduction. And I'll probably have another column in that just kind of has some add-ons from some changes that's in between the proposed budget and the 2 mil reduction, but it kind of gives you a couple different things to look at. And then below that we'll show all the different categories of what has to come out of the budget in order to make that work, or a couple items that would go into it, and if they come into it, obviously they're positives and negatives. So you didn't give me specific direction on a 2 mil type thing, but I thought it makes sense to go with, here's where we are, 2, 3, which is a 1 mil, then a 2 and a 3, and then you can work it from there. Perfect. If that makes sense, that's what we will probably spend most of our time on Monday evening. Thank you, Doug. Thank you.
Anything else? Meeting is adjourned.
Please visit our website at www.wycokck.org for a complete listing of our schedule for public meetings.